Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. And please do note that this is interactive. And so I can see that there are about 30 participants on the call. And so when we do these little interactive elements, if I only get 6 responses, I know that many of you are just eating lunch or having afternoon tea, right? And I know this, all right? So please do feel free to participate when those opportunities, and it will just be via chat. So that's going to be quite easy for us. To say. So as you can see here, we have my screen, and we're going to talk today about writing and presenting research. And I think this is one of those things where here at UCL, obviously we're very lucky. We get some of the best graduate students in the world, but what we're going to talk about today is really where they struggle too. And the process of it, and kind of as someone who's now supervised, this is my 3rd country, there are some kind of things that I see over and over again. So I'll provide a few tools. Now, I also want to emphasize that there are lots of tools out there. So the things that I share today, maybe they don't work well for you, and that's okay. But they give us maybe a starting point for how you think about research and how you think about writing. So, okay, so that being said, 3 things to get started with, and I think these are 3 things that are really important to remember. And by the way, Myra, if there are comments that come up and you need to jump in, I can't necessarily keep an eye on the comment section, so please feel free to pop up with things. I think it's really important to remember that research is a process, not a product. And I think oftentimes we start this process thinking, I want to get this number of publications, or I need to get X, Y, and Z from it. And that's not the point of research. The point of research is really to spend time in it and to understand the process and the ups and the downs, and to learn a lot of things along the way. If you're only doing research to get a publication, that's probably the wrong reason, right? So we'll talk more about that in a second. The second thing is, research comes more naturally to some people than others, but it's not easy for anybody. I've never met even some of the most prolific scholars in the world who said, oh, that was easy. We all get rejected. We all don't get grants. We all have trouble funding. We all don't send in our first draft. We send in our 87th draft, right? So I think that it's important to also remember that research is not a simple process for even the best scholars. And so if you're starting out, remember that. It's not easy. It shouldn't be easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it, right? And then the third rule is something that I use in class. You've probably heard me say this before if you were at one of my prior seminars. You always have to use the 3 before any reviewer sees. And what I mean by that is 3 other people should always have reviewed your paper before it goes anywhere professional. So if you're a supervisor, you know one of the worst things you get is the first draft of anything. You should never get the first draft. So if you're a student out there, you've got to have critical friends that will help review things for you. So when we say 3 before reviewers see, what I mean by that is you should have 3 other sets of eyes on any of the work that you do before you turn it in for a supervisor, before you submit it to a journal, before you do anything like that. You've got to get 3 other sets of eyes to review it. And that's really important because, again, this part of this process is really important, but it's hard to do well, and you want other people's opinions. I think, and for those of us who are, professors or have our doctorate or in the field and researchers, whatever, I think we would all admit that you cannot be sensitive. You can't be sensitive skin because you get honest feedback, and it's really hard. The sooner as a student that you can prepare yourself for that and appreciate that feedback, your relationship with feedback will grow to a point where it's actually quite healthy. You appreciate it and enjoy it. And so you want to make sure that you're sharing your work with others. So what I'd like you to do in the chat box, please, I'd like to just understand real quick, who's out there today? Are you a student, a professor, a researcher, a staff member? Who are you? If you could put that in the chat real quick, that would be great. And then Myra, if you could update me on who we see out there in the crowd. I know you know many of these people already, but I would love to know a little bit more about them. I've got the chat pulled up here as well, but if I miss anything, I'd love for you to give me a little bit of feedback there as well. So,
yep. Our PhD students are on top of things. They've been answering.
See that? Yeah, the students are quick. It's the professors we got to look at eye for. Thank you for, I think it was Mona. Thank you. You're a faculty member. Yes, you get the prize. Myra said she'll take you out to lunch if you answer. So George, thank you for your answer as well. Yay, professors. Yeah, my lunch is on Myra for everyone. And by the way, I should also say it was Myra's birthday just a couple of days ago. So for any of you who don't know that, she takes you out to lunch, but you have to buy the desserts. Okay, you have to buy all the desserts for her. So all the sweets,
chocolates in the world.
yeah, all the chocolates go to her. So happy birthday to Myra as well. So that's our first question. Now the second question, what's your area of research interest? So in 5 words or less, right? I'd like you to put in there, what is your area of research interest? And try to be very succinct, okay? So 5 words or less, what's your area of research? Okay, so science education, that's fantastic. What else we got? Leadership, policy.
Multiliteracies from Dr. Mona.
Yep. Art, special education, I love that, great. Okay, good. So we've got quite a wide variety here, which is great to see, because I think one of the things about research is we can sometimes get so stuck into our area that we don't understand the bigger impact. And it's good to work with collaborators who can bring in different things. International politics, whew, bless you for that one. Yikes. I don't know that I'd want to be involved in anything with politics right now, but I'm sure it's a fascinating area of scholarship. So good for you. So, okay, so that helps. Thank you for that. So a few things before you start. Now, again, for our students here, a lot of this is kind of geared towards you, but faculty members, I hope that you will see, and colleagues, I hope that you will see how this maybe can help you shape things, or if you already have your own ways, how this might be able to supplement what you already do. So the first thing we do is, before you start research, why? It's quite a simple question, but why are you doing this? Why are you doing this project? And I think this is really important. And there are kind of 5 guiding things that I think about before we start. You know, do you actually have a real interest in this topic, or is it just there's grant funding and it's easy at this point? Do you have experience with the topic? Do you actually know the background or the history of this? And that's really important. Are you being pragmatic? And so I'm going to ask a couple of further questions about that in a minute. Do you believe in the topic? Is this something that's really important to you, or are you just doing it because you've got to get another publication, or because you've got someone who wants to do this project with you? And finally, this is a big one. Does this research actually matter? Will this research matter? And the reason that I ask that is because the reason that research doesn't get finished is these things don't happen. So if you can't say yes to all 5 of those questions, don't engage in it. Just don't even start it, because we have lots of research that starts but never finishes. And half-done research projects don't matter. And you can end up spending a lot of time chasing rabbit holes. You can spend a lot of time on stuff that, if you don't actually have the passion, if you're not pragmatic about it, if you don't have the experience about it, then these things, you know, the research won't finish. So make sure that you understand why you're doing it right at the start. Okay, and that's the first thing. And by the way, I will be sharing all the tools and all the frameworks and all these slides at the very end. So you will have access to those as well. I'll give you access to those, and I'll put the slides in the folder, the link that I'm going to share with you. But again, I want to make sure that we're clear on this. Know why. You have to know why before you ever start. Now, once you get started, then you can ask some further questions, right? Once you're sure about why you're doing it, and do you know the field and its literature well? Why are there important questions in the field? What are the other questions outside? Because math education or science education or special education, well, what's bigger? What's going on in education as a whole? What's going on in international education? Again, these cross collaborations are really important. Does this area need further exploration? Has a study like this been done before? And that's not a bad thing if it has, because oftentimes that can provide a template for how to do the next study. And you can also look for areas of improvement, right? Is the timing right for this question to be answered? Is it a hot topic, or is it becoming obsolete? And so there are a few areas in the field of, you know, special education and inclusive education now that are really, really hot. But like, for example, if you take autism, everyone talks about autism all the time, right? And it is a hot area. But one of the things that I'm working along with our Center for Research in Autism Education here at UCL is this a 10-year issue or is it just right now? Because if you go back to the mid 90s, right, and that dates myself a little bit, the mid 90s and early 2000s, if anyone remembers, the big thing at that point was ADHD. Everybody was talking about ADHD, right? And we had all these diagnoses and all this stuff. And now it's actually slid back a little bit. So again, thinking about, is this something that's a hot topic that is just right now, or is it something that you can build a career on? And even the small topics you can build a career on, but you have to be a bit more pragmatic about how you're going to do that, right? So as supervisors, I always ask my students 4 things before I'll accept them as a student. So again, this is for faculty and supervisors. They have to answer these 4 things. And I usually ask them to do it in 1 page. So they have to write a 1-pager, answer these 4 questions. And we'll talk more about why I limit it to 1 page, but and that'll come up a little bit later when we get to the writing section. But again, as supervisors, before I'll accept any doctoral candidates or master students, even if they're assigned to me, these are the first thing that they do is they have to answer these 4 questions. What's the gap in the literature? What's your research question? How are you going to go about answering it? You know, what will your methods be? How many participants are you going to have? What's your analysis? And then what will the impact of your findings be? One of the big things I think that we're really good here at UCL about is impact. We're not interested in doing work unless it's going to make a difference. And so I think that, you know, if you start from that and then work backwards, sometimes that can be easier. Now, that being said, once you have those questions, our job as supervisors is to figure out where are the gaps, right? Where are the gaps in thought? Where are the gaps in the literature that they can explore, et cetera? And as you do that, this is one of the things that we want to ask, especially with that research question. So I'm going to show you a research question here in a minute. And in the chat box, I'd like you to tell me how that research question could be improved. Okay, so it's a fairly general research question. I'd like you to tell me how it can be improved. So here's the research question. Are students more successful in inclusive schools in the UAE? So in the chat box, and I understand that that's not everyone's field, but this is a general enough question. I'd like you to put down, how could that research question be improved? Because this is, again, one of the big things. And I'm going to go through 3 areas that we see that students really struggle with here in a minute, but this is the very first one of those. So without giving you more, in the chat box, don't be shy. Tell me what you, how could that be improved? That question right there. Good. I think it's Sana, perhaps. What is meant by successful? Oh, come on now. See, this is where everyone's having tea. Don't be shy. And by the way, I'm a teacher, right? So I believe in wait time. I will wait it out until we get at least 5 or 10 responses. I don't mind waiting. Okay, we've got some other questions coming up there about where and who will the research be conducted, to what extent, right? And again, what we're seeing here is, and I'm sure that as supervisors, you see this sometimes, but as far as students go, what we often see is students come in and they want to save the world with one study. They've got these master big grand plans, right? And one of our jobs, and what I talk about here, is what we call the research triangle. What we have to do is take that very, very, very large field, right? Because when I say students, what does students mean? Is that female students? Is it male students? Is it primary students? Is it secondary students? Is it adult students? Is it students in school? Is that formal education? Is it informal education? When we talk about inclusive schools, how do we define inclusive schools? When we talk about the UAE, are we really talking about the whole UAE? That's huge, all right? It's 7 Emirates, right? So like, what does that mean? And so then what we have to do is really start to filter it down. So one of the things that question might end up as is, are children with disabilities, because now we've defined who our students are, more academically successful, right? In fully inclusive schools in Abu Dhabi. Now, this is not, by the way, a fully complete research question, but this is the process, right? And so as students, one of the things you want to do is you want to start looking at your grand question and say, what needs to be more defined, right? What are the terms in that question that can be better defined? So students, successful, inclusive, UAE, and really start to circle those questions and think, what do I need to define more? Right. And that's one of the first things that we see. And this is, I haven't put these on a slide anywhere, so you might want to write these down. The three biggest problems that I see for researchers and for students is, first of all, lack of specificity. And I think that was mentioned in the chat box. You have to be more specific, right? So that's one of the very first things. Now, once you get the research to a place where, or the question to a place where you feel like it's fairly specific, then we can move on to the next part, and that's reviewing the literature. Just going to go through this quite quickly because there will be some time for discussion and questions at the end. But when you're reviewing the literature, there's a couple of tools that I'll have put in your, yes, and thank you for that. Is it going to be quantitative? Is it going to be qualitative? Again, that last research question, there's more that we need to do there, but I just want to show the process of getting it down to a place where we can actually start the work. Once you do the literature review, as you're reviewing literature, oftentimes we'll find that students will just read articles and they'll kind of try to take a few things without critically analyzing articles. So this idea of critical thought is really important. And there are some guides out there for you. As you're reading articles, you can start asking some of these questions, right? So one of the things that you can do is, if you look at that left-hand side, as you pick up an article, you know, ask yourself, does the title accurately reflect the content? Are there significant words in the title at the beginning to catch a reader's attention? Like, these are going to help you when you write, but they'll also help you understand, is this a good article or not? And so there's a couple of checklists. Again, I'm going to share them at the end. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but that's for the whole paper as a whole. Now, if you decide that it's a good paper, one of the things that you might want to do is actually just make little notes about it. And so one of the things that I encourage my graduate students to do is, as you're reading a paper, just write down the basics. So each one of these little 4 squares, right, these 4 boxes, is a different paper. So if you look at Milgram's work, I'm sure that we've all kind of heard about these electric stock studies they did out on the west coast of the US. You know, what was the procedure? What were the key findings? Why is this article considered a classic or a seminal piece of work? And then what are the key criticisms? Oftentimes as students, I feel like you don't necessarily want to criticize work. That's your job, right? As critical thinkers, you need to start looking at these studies and be as critical as possible. So every article you read, what was the procedure? What were the key findings? Why is that article important, or is it considered a classic? And then what are the things that it's missing, right? What are the criticisms of it or things that could be improved upon, right? So all this is important as you're reading through your literature. Now, after we do that, how do we think about organizing a research article? There's lots of stuff out there on this. I'm just going to show you one particular model because it's a nice graphic. And I know Myra likes pretty things. This is a really pretty thing. So when you look at this, it's quite easy to see. And I'm going to go through each of these steps, okay? But if you look at this as a whole, it's based on the shape of what you should see. So your abstract should be quite small, right? And again, as we get closer, we'll get into these specific things. Your introduction's a little bit wider. And then again, you're narrowing down, right? That's part of that process. That triangle is narrowing down to your actual questions and your methodology. Your methodology is quite short. Your results are quite short. But then your discussion becomes wider again. The discussion's where you get to have the fun part, because that's where you actually get to add your opinion. Now, I don't know how your supervisors feel. I will tell you what my doctoral supervisor told me, and I remind my students. As a student, no one cares what you think. So until you get to the discussion part, I don't want to hear about your opinions. After you've conducted the study and you're writing the discussion, by all means, please tell me what you think. But everything up to the discussion needs to be referenced by someone else, by other foundational work. Does that make sense to everybody? If that makes sense, throw a little Y in the chat box. If you disagree, you can say you disagree. But this is some of the best advice that I ever got, was no one cares what I think until the discussion. right? And then Giorgio, at the end, please, 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 I want to hear your feedback on that, because what happens oftentimes and what we see is that students they're so excited about it, they start sharing their stuff up here in the lit review, but they haven't done any literature yet, right? So everything in the lit review, everything in the intro needs to be setting the stage for the discussion, and then you can share what you think. So happy to talk about that more later. So again, as we get into these specific sessions, when we look at the literature review, right, you can go back and start doing some of those things that we talked about above. And again, I'm going to share this with you so you can go into it more in depth a little bit later. The methodology, the data used for this study were collected by, right? You want to tell who collected it, how did they collect it, why was it important, what was the process? And then you get down to results and discussion. And again, this is where you can actually share your opinion. Be very explicit, right? As you're introducing the discussion, be very explicit. The findings of this study show, boom. What do they say? Tell us explicitly, right? Be very, very explicit about that. And then you can say, one explanation may be this based on so-and-so's work. One explanation may be this based on so-and-so's work. Or as novel research, perhaps this is the explanation. And that's where you get to share what you actually think might have been part of it, right? So I think that the second thing, now who remembers what I said the first problem that we see oftentimes? This is the quiz part, this is the interactive part. I said I'm going to give about 3 concerns that we see with doctoral students and graduate students. Number 1 was what? Does anyone remember? See how much you were listening. Halima, yeah, it's too broad, right? We've got to be specific, right? Perfect. There's lack of focus. Really good. I love this. You guys are awesome. So the second thing is lack of pragmatism. So when you're writing a paper, it is a science. If you follow these kinds of things, you will be much more successful, right? So you want to be very pragmatic about writing your findings. And this is, again, this is just one framework. There are others. But number 1, they want to save the world. They get very general, so they're not specific enough. Number 2, they're not pragmatic enough about reporting. This tells you exactly, and it gives you phrases, right? If you look out there to the left of this thing, it's giving you actual phrases. In the past decade, in the past 10 years, much of the research is focused on. You can actually steal that phrase and use it, right? It remains unclear. You can steal that phrase and use it. So be very pragmatic about your writing. You do not have to start from a blank piece of paper. And I'm gonna give you a couple more things here in a minute to show you how we can do that. But all of this part right here, right, shows you exactly what you should say, and in some cases, how to say it, okay? So again, think about how you can use this to be very pragmatic about your writing. And that's the second big thing we see. Number 1, lack of specificity. Number 2, kind of trying to start from just scratch when there's ways to be very pragmatic about sharing your research. Okay, so I'd like you to put in the chat box, what's the hardest thing about writing? When you go through and please, professors, faculty members, we all know this is really, really hard. So share what your hardest thing is as well. What is a challenge for you? Please, 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 in the chat box there. I can see Myra's typing. Dr. Manzoor, I don't see you typing yet. I'm looking at you as well. What's the hardest thing about writing? Let's put something in the chat box. Okay. The idea itself. Yeah, writer's block, connection. Yep. The problem statement, stating quite specifically it is. Where to start? Yes, starting the writing. I'm seeing that a couple of times. Good. All right, I see you, Dr. Manzoor. I'm teasing you, of course. To keep on writing, okay? So I would agree with a few of those things. I think they're all really, really good. Here's what I try to teach our students about the writing process. And actually one of our colleagues who you may have worked with before, Alfredo Batista, who's in Hong Kong, he and I worked on this model that I'm going to show you in a minute together. And he actually introduced it to me, and then I've changed it a little bit. But this is the most important thing to remember to start with. Write without fear, edit without mercy. If I can give you one tip of advice, this is it. Write, and then edit. Right? And again, this will be included in the resources, so you can use this. You can actually put this up, etc. Write without fear, edit without mercy. right? And I think it's really important that we understand that as graduate students, because sometimes writer's block is simply a block that we've put on ourselves, right? Get it out, okay? But how we organize our writing to be pragmatic can be important, right? So you sit down and you look at this blank screen and you're like, what the do I do next? Right? I've got these ideas. What do I actually do? So this is what Dr. Alfredo and I'm just going to call him Alfredo because that's what I always call him. He and I worked out. So what we do, we actually color code our writing. Okay, and I'm gonna walk through this quite quickly. I know Myra, we've probably talked about this before. We color code our writing. So everything that you see in black and bold is an area that will never disappear off our final paper. So like an introduction, the abstract, the literature review, those will be black and bold in the middle of our papers. Okay, those stay there, and again, it's color coded. Okay, now anything that is in red is very, very general. So what that means is this general section is going to be about blank. So if you're talking about science education, you might talk about science as a whole. What is science, right? As you're defining something. And then let's say, I don't know science at all, so I'm a little bit out of my depth here, but I'm going to try to go with it. Let's say you're talking specifically about chemistry education. Then you might talk specifically about chemistry. Then you might talk about chemistry education for secondary students. You see what I mean? But the red sections are just in general what it's about. Here's an important part. Before you even start, you know some of what you want to write about. You put those down in blue sentences. Okay, so these are your lead sentences of each paragraph. So science is the inquiry into natural ways of the world. I don't know, but that's your blue sentence, right? And that is something that's not going away. So at the end of the paper, you're going to take the red out because you don't need that heading. This is just for you to organize your actual writing. I'm going to show you this a little more in depth in a minute. Okay, but the blue section is your lead sentence of every paragraph. Now, this is probably the most important thing you can do, is make sure that your lead sentences are really clear. But you can write those at the start. You don't have to have, I'm not asking you to put references down yet or anything like that. Just put what your lead sentence for each paragraph will be. And then what you do is you start filling in the research as you find it. So if your lead sentence is science is the inquiry into the ways of the world, what references do you have that will support that? As you're reading through articles and you find that article that's a gem and you find that statement, you just start copying and pasting it into bullets. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit clearer picture in the next slide, but I just want you to understand just in general what happens. And then what you happen is after you do all that, then you have orange transition sentences, right? The orange sentence is what transitions you to the next thought or the next paragraph. So what that looks like, right? And this is a paper that I wrote 6 or 7 years ago with some students while in Singapore, actually. So you can see in red, the role of technology in pre-service teacher learning. That was kind of the general section that this was going to be about, was kind of the role of technology in as teachers are going through their university programs, how much are they learning about technology? You can see blue sentences. Now, I wrote these before we started even really getting into the literature review. The integration of mobile technology is a crucial factor in the improvement in teaching and learning. That's something I believe to be true. That's one of the things that we thought was going to happen about this paper. And then, so you look at the next blue sentence. Many educational systems in numerous countries require practicum teachers, pre-service teachers, to undertake computer literacy courses. We kind of knew that to be true for some other things that I had read, so I threw that one in there as well. Then what we did is, as we started reviewing literature, you can see these black dots, these bullet points here. These were literally just copy and pasted from other articles at the start. So anytime we would find something that talked about the integration of mobile technology being crucial, we would just copy and paste it in, right? So that's how we started the process. And then after we got a few of those things together, we would write these orange sentences that were kind of transitioned us to the next thought. Again, I could show you, and you will have as part of the resource I'm sharing with you, this whole model. But what that turned into was this article. Okay, now I show you that because if you look side by side at how the article ended to what we started, you will see, and I hope you really take a chance to look at these slides, or at this slide here. Look at the blue sentence on the left, okay? The transition to mobile technology and classroom practices caters to the needs of learners in the 21st century. Now, what that says, right? Yes, Myra, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, okay? But what that says there on the left is not the starting sentence on the right. You see what I mean? Like, it will change, you will edit it. But the blue sentence gives you a starting point for what you think to be true about this work. And then you go back, and after you have, so if I look at this left slide, or right, the left photo, I know that that's what I want this paragraph to say. Now I have to go back and reshape it. Now I have to go back to make sure that I'm referencing correctly, to make sure that I'm not stealing things, that I'm not plagiarizing. But I've got all the background research for that initial statement. So again, what started like this turned into a publishable paper, and we just did it all color coded the entire way. The other thing, and some of you who don't use color coding, you know that once you get about 8 or 9 pages into a document, you end up spending a lot of time scrolling through just to find that sentence or just to find that reference. Well, when you color code it, it's quite simple to know exactly where you were going, because I know that if it's about the definition of mobile technology, I just look for the red section. If it's about the transition, I just look at the red section. So color coding can make a massive difference. And I see, I think it was Georgia. Yeah, Georgia, I think you said you use color coding as well. I would love to hear more about how you use it. But again, I want to make sure that this is really quite clear for you. It's a really good way to go from that blank piece of paper. Just start writing out lead sentences that what you know already, and then you can start filling it in with other stuff. So that's the first thing. Now, how do we revise? I actually have a writing checklist. And this is one of the things that I've put in there. I actually go back through and I don't want any sentences that are more than 20 words. Right? That's really important. No sentences that are more than 20 words. So after I've written my initial draft, I go back and actually go through this checklist. And if there's sentences more than 20 words, I cross it and I have to change it. And what I'll also do, remember the 3 before someone else sees it rule? I'll have someone else, a critical friend, go through with this checklist and follow it through. So things like pronouns, a sentence should never start with this or they or he or she. Who are you talking about? At the start of a sentence, you've got to make sure that you name explicitly who you're talking about. Don't use a pronoun. Oftentimes, especially if you're writing in your second or third language, tenses become an issue, and you'll start mixing tenses up in the middle of sentences. We have to be very careful of that. So we have to make sure that we're paying very close attention for that. What I call almost words. How much is almost? How much is most? Few, some. Those words mean nothing. So take them out of your paper. And you can actually, you know, at the top of your Word document where you do the find, you can go in and find. And if you've said some, go in and take out all the words where you said some, because some doesn't mean anything. Yeah, or never, everybody, nobody. Those are great because they don't mean anything, right? So we want to be really explicit. So again, I have an actual writing checklist. You can use this one as a start or make up your own. If you know that you struggle with certain patterns in your writing, make up your own checklist to make sure that those don't exist, or they just exist a little bit. If you look here on the left, this was a tweet that went out in January. What's the best piece of best academic writing tip you've ever received? It's a really cool thread. You can look it up by Eric Newman if you're on Twitter. I just pulled out a few of the things that came up from academics around the world on the right-hand side. Ask yourself, can I say this in fewer words? One of the hard parts about academic writing, and I hope that you all will agree, yes, it will be, I will share it with the slides. One of the hardest things about academic writing, okay, is that how are we taught to write when we're in school? We're taught to write long and flowy and use adjectives and describe everything. We're taught to write like the books that Myra reads, right? Incredibly descriptive, beautiful colors, Really important emotional feelings. Science doesn't care about any of that. Tell me what you mean and mean what you tell me, right? So this idea of how can you say whatever you're saying in fewer words. And one of the things that one of the exercises, and for supervisors, this might be a good exercise for you. One of the exercises that I'll do with my students is after they send me a draft, if it's say 200 words, I'll say, get this down to 150 words. Or if it's 100 words, I'll say, can you say it in 75 words? You see what I mean? Like I'm constantly saying, how can you shorten the words in this? You can say the same thing, but I want you to say it more succinctly, right? Second thing, the paper should be intelligible by reading only the first sentence of each paragraph, right? So again, if you go back to the color coding, once you get to the end of your draft, you should be able to read just those blue sentences and the whole paper will make complete sense to you. Everything other than the blue sentences is support. You should just be able to read the lead sentence of each paragraph. Half your time should be spent on outlining. Never write before you've created an outline, right? And this goes back to that kind of the color coding, right? Spend a lot of time with that part because it's important. This is a really big one by Sam Jane B. Stop writing before you're empty. Leave the start of a sentence for the next day. So when you're really going strong, stop then and start writing the next paragraph, but don't finish it. And I'll actually leave, what are those three little things called? Ellipses, or what's the three little dots that we put? I don't know what those things are, but you know what I'm talking about. Myra, what are they called? I can't hear you.
Dot.
Yeah, thank you. Ellipses and dot. You know what I'm talking about. So start a sentence and put dot, because what that will do for your mind is that will jog where you were when you were in a really hot spot. But oftentimes you'll get in this habit of writing until you're just completely empty. And when what happens? You don't want to go back to it for 3 or 4 weeks, right? So stop writing when you're at the peak. And then that will give you more motivation to come back the next day. And this last one, I love it. This is by one of my colleagues, actually. Don't get it right, get it written, right? And this goes back to that, write without fear, edit without mercy, right? Okay. I say that again, just to reemphasize this. Now I'm going to go about 5 to 10 more minutes here talking about these final couple things and presenting, and then I would love to open it up to questions, comments, agreements, disagreements, funny jokes, anything you may have to share. So what's the hardest thing about presenting? Please put that in the chat box. What's the hardest thing for you about presenting your research? Again, I'll wait. Ahmad, yeah, tell the audience what the story is, getting to the point, fitting all your points in a certain time frame. Yep. Time, managing time. Agree. Not knowing your audience. Huge. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Good. These are all really good things. And I hope that, by the way, I hope that Myra or someone else there can capture the chat too, because I think that you're bringing up some really good points for supervisors to cover in the future, because I think these are really good things that are coming up. So anyone know what this is on the screen? What did you say, Myra? Yeah, it's the Titanic. So we all know the story of the Titanic, right? I heard presenting this way one time and I thought it was brilliant. And it was actually by Kamala Harris, the new vice president of the US. And one of the things she said about presenting, she said, what you have to remember is it's like you're on the deck of the Titanic. If the Titanic's going down, what you look like and how you sound doesn't matter. The most important thing is the message. Get the message across. Don't make presenting about you, making it about what your audience needs to hear. And oftentimes when we get into research, we start going really detailed because we think it's interesting. We want to show how much we know. We want to sound really smart. What does our audience need to hear? If you are on the Titanic, you don't need to talk about why the ship's going down. You just need to let them know, get to safe, get in your boat, right? That's the most important thing. With our research, what does the audience need to know? That is critical. It's not about you or how smart you are, right? And so keep that in mind. Now, that being said, 20 basics. I'm going to go through them quick. You're going to have them on the presentation, so you don't have to pay attention, but it's kind of fun if you do. Always introduce yourself. If they don't introduce you, and Myra did a fantastic job introducing me today, thank you for that. But always introduce yourself. Start with who you are. I've seen so many presenters get up and they go right in there, and I'm thinking, but I don't know who you are. Tell me about you or your history. 20 or 30 seconds on yourself. Why is this important to you? What's your background, etc. Start with what matters. Tell them right away, this is important because. Be that explicit about it. Don't make us go on a guessing, an expedition. You can tell a cool story and tell a cool narrative throughout, but tell us why we're going there from the start. Show your personality. Don't be boring. Boring's terrible. Don't be boring. Limit the text on a slide. Ugh. How many of those people do you see slides that have so many lines? And there are lots of good guidance out there. Here's my general rule of thumb. No more than 5 lines and no more than 7 words in a line. So no more than 5 lines, no more than 7 words in a line. Avoid white backgrounds. White backgrounds can be really hard on students with disabilities. So it's much gentler on the eyes, and you can see all my backgrounds are just a light gray. So think quite clearly about what colors you use, because they make a big difference to your audience, right? Pace yourself. One of the things that came up is time. So know approximately how long you take. I know that sometimes I will use black with white print, but it depends again on the setting that you're going to be presenting in. Here's my general rule of thumb: 1 minute per slide. So I know that if I want to present for 45 minutes, I have about 45 slides. Now, some of those slides I'll be done within 3 seconds. Other slides I'll sit on for a minute or two. But I know that for me, it ends up being about a minute a slide. That's my general rule of thumb. Yours might be different. Have more than you need, right? Always have more than you need behind your original slides. I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. What happens if I would have gotten through this in 30 minutes and then there's no questions? And then we're sitting there like, I've got 5 or 6 activities behind my slides here that we could do. We're not going to have time for them today, but they're there, right? Never rush. Remember, this is not about you getting through everything. It's about what the audience gets from it. I would rather you get through 60% of your slides and me get 60 of it than you get through all 100% and me only get 45% because you were rushing so much. Slow down if you need to. Name names. When you're talking about your research, name drop. Tell the story, cite the researcher. That gives you credibility because you're willing to give credit to others. Really important. Be specific and focused about what you want and what you know. Again, be explicit. Be very explicit. And if you don't know, say, I don't know. This is an area that we haven't got into yet. That's important as well. Blank space on the slides is okay. People feel like they need to fill up their whole slide with colors and pictures and animations and letters. Visually, that's exhausting. Visually, it's really, really hard. So don't do that. Never put more on a slide than you would put on a t-shirt. Nice little general rule of thumb to keep in mind. Bullets are for guns, not for slides. Don't use bullets. Lots of other things that you can do. Never read to us. Words are a prompt. Now, again, I know that I'm doing this right now because these are short little win hitters, but if there's anything long, don't read to us. Like, give the audience a chance to read. And then if you want to emphasize certain parts, that's fine. Remember your nonverbals. I could do this whole slide kind of like, remember your nonverbals. Those are really important. Don't be afraid to laugh at yourself. Verbals are important, right? Show, especially in Zoom settings, especially when you're doing things online, show your personality, allow that things to come through. Do not be afraid to laugh at yourself. Use silence. Oftentimes when I put a big slide up that's really impactful, I'll just stand there, not say anything. Let the audience just take it in. Be yourself within character. You are a character. Own it. Enjoy it. And don't feel like you have to be something you're not. Use humor when possible. And if you're not funny, that's okay. Throw in a funny joke that you read on the internet, right? Throw up a funny video, but make it fun. Remember, I may have said this before in one of the prior things, the ha-ha leads to the aha. So if you can get people laughing, they're much more likely to have that aha moment, right? And smile, 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 smile. Critical to smile. Everybody, just even if your camera's not on, just smile to yourself real quick. Just give yourself a smile. Come on, do it. Really, no, play along. Just give me a little smile right there. Even if you're not, yeah, thank you. Thank you. I can tell you all smiling. That's fantastic. So those are some of the basics of presenting to remember. Oh yeah, I love it. We got smiles in the forum. And then this is the final thing. When you're presenting, you're only as good as your practice. You know, you've got to practice a lot, especially if you haven't done it a lot of presenting your research before. Kind of like your writing, practice in front of 3 people before you practice in front of your audience. This is important. You got to spend time at it if you want to be good. People, and thank you for some of the comments, people saying that I'm good. Well, I practice this a lot. I genuinely do. It may come across as natural. I practice presenting all the time. I practice writing all the time. You just have to put the time in. I'm really quite boring person, but I practice this as an act for you all, for the audience. All right, so moving forward, last couple of things here. Organizing your presentation. Now, these are the slides that I've gone through today, okay? One of the things that I want to point out in this is our last 2 slides or 3 slides here, is you see all this down here in the green, from the green on, that's all that extra content. My last slide is this kind of dark slide number 44. That's my actual last slide. All these other 7 or 8 slides there are extra material that I have, right? And green slides are actually activities that I would actually have you do. So I've always got extra stuff. But if you look, I've got this kind of slide 1 and slide 44 are the same. Those are my place markers, right? But you can look, if you look at my slides, besides these ones with images, there's not a lot of text on any of them. They're quite clear and blank because, again, it's not about me making it look pretty. It's about what the audience can get from it. And the way that we get the most is not to be visually distracted by too much. Keep it simple, keep it succinct. So what I'd like you to put down in the chat box, please, is one reflection. What's one thing that has really stuck out to you today? It could be about the writing process. It could be about supervising. It could be about presenting. What's one thing that has really stuck out for you today? Please, please, please make sure that you put something in there. Okay, color coding. Yeah, edit, edit, edit. Yeah, be you. Be you. We want to see you. Yeah, Titanic, right? The message is the most important thing. It's not you. It's not you. It's about the message that they receive. Thank you for being here, sir. For anyone who's had to leave. Okay, so here is a chance for you to ask any questions or comments. And then in our last couple minutes, I will give you the links. Now, for those of you who have to leave, if you want to go ahead and check out the links, there you go. I do not have the slides in there yet. They will be put in 5 minutes after this because I'm constantly making changes and tweaks. Yeah, the 5 questions. Good, 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 good. Because I haven't got, if you were listening carefully, you know that I haven't got to my 3rd concern, right? The 3rd thing that we see. What was number 1? Anybody, you can speak up now, please. Talk it out, talk it out, talk it out. Speak up, write without fear, edit without, yeah, I love that. Number 1, yeah, too broad. What's number 2? I can't hear you.
Pragmatism.
Yes, the lack of pragmatism. So here's number 3. We don't take enough time for slow scholarship. Now, what I mean by that is we are, especially once we get into faculty roles, we really want to get publications out. We really want to get grants. And so we start to rush through things. Slow down. Really think critically, take time, read the extra article, give yourself space to do work. Now, that means you have to still do work. That doesn't mean you take 3 weeks off and, you know, forget about the project. But what it means is be pragmatic about every day, every week, have some goals, but don't rush it. It's not about the next publication, it's about the quality of the publication. That's one thing that we're really, and that's part of the reason I think at IOE we're #1 in the world, and we're just named for the 8th straight year, is because we really focus on quality. You know, but that has to happen through slow scholarship. That's not a rushed process, right? So I'll say good luck, but I'm going to also open it up. Let's questions, comments, ideas. please, 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 please say something and throw your cameras on if you feel comfortable. Yeah, I'm going to clap for you all because you've been so engaged on the chat, and that makes a big difference, right? It makes a big difference for all of us. So there's my information. You can hit me on Twitter. You can, Myra has my email address. She's got my phone number. Don't give that out, Myra, all right? Because I would love to respond to each of you, but via email or Twitter. You can also find my website, which my email is on there too. So I'm gonna stop sharing. Would love, love, love to hear your comments, thoughts, ideas, disagreements. Please feel free to disagree, that's fine. Tell what works for you. What are your top tips? Because I think that that's important. So the background on this presentation, and by the way, speak up, please, not just through the chat. I would love to hear your voices, but that was on a gray presentation. It was actually a gray, there's a gray background. So if you go in, obviously, to your background colors, stark white is very different than gray. So I can actually go ahead and throw any other questions. And Myra, if you want to ask questions here.
Wonderful, very engaging presentation, Zachary, as per usual, as to be expected. We are really very grateful to have you with us. Dr. Zachary Walker is one of the most sought after keynote speakers around the world. He gets invited to all kinds of wonderful places, Iceland, Netherlands, and so many other countries. So we're really very happy to have him here in the UAE. So I'm sure my colleagues and our graduate students have a few other questions. Any questions from your side? I can moderate, you can raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourselves.
Dr. Myra, this is Megri. Thank you very much. This has been so insightful.
Thank you for speaking up.
Though I was driving, but I didn't disconnect. So it was really amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I should have said at the start, safety first. So you can't be
sure. We have all those things that we keep ourselves safety. So I was just putting my phone aside and listening to you through connecting to the Bluetooth. Thank you so much.
Good, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks for driving safely. That's important. Thank you.
So maybe I'll just call on some of our other colleagues who are here.
I want to show you real quick while people think of their questions or comments. Please do speak up, y'all. Don't be shy. And if you don't have anything to say, just say something anyway. That's fine. It can be a joke. Tell me a joke. I love jokes. I want to show though real quick the screen again, because someone has said, well, why did you use a white background? So these are the backgrounds that I use, and I want you to see the difference between that and this. There's only a slight difference, but can you tell the difference? This is pure white. This is just a little bit off gray. This is a bit darker gray, right? But this middle one right here, especially if you have a visual issue, it will really bounce your eyes a bit more. While this one here is just a little bit more subdued. And that makes a big difference for some of our individuals with visual impairments. So anyway, that's it. What do you got? Talk to me.
So thank you very much. It was very interesting to hear you, Professor. And especially the colors. At the one side, it was really difficult to understand the color scheme as light gray, dark gray, and white. Yeah. But you keep the interest of the audience this way. So it's wonderful hearing you, and especially the way you presented the whole things right from the start to the topic and to the end. It was really interesting to hear you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I see a knock knock joke in the chat. Knock knock. Who's there? Orange. Orange who? Orange you a banana? That's one of my favorite jokes ever. Gosh,
my favorite. It's aren't you glad I didn't say banana? And I say it 20 times and my children start laughing at the 20th time. I just
it's
keep
brilliant.
The same joke. I love it. It's my favorite.
I did too. Thank you. I used to tell a joke of the day in all my classes, and they were the most terrible jokes in the world.
You just keep repeating them, and then eventually someone will laugh.
Yeah, and if you laugh yourself like they're funny, even though they're not, the class will start laughing at you, and that's okay,
Exactly.
right? Like, who cares?
Yes.
As long as they're laughing at something.
Exactly.
So I've got a, because we have a little bit of an international crowd here, I've got one of my favorite jokes that I just heard, which is an international joke. Feel free to use it, but you got to have an international group to do it.
Okay.
What's the best thing about Switzerland?
I would say chocolate, because that's what I'm thinking.
See, that's what everyone thinks, but I'm
Yeah.
not really sure, but the flag's a big plus.
Uh-huh.
See, if you know the Swiss flag,
Yeah, it's a
you
big
will get why
plus.
that is funny.
Yeah, there's
Right?
a big plus. Yeah.
I don't know, but the flag is a big plus.
Yeah.
See, that takes us the right kind of
It's
audience.
funny. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny.
So,
Great conversation. Thank you for your time.
no, thank you. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thank
We
you.
do have a hand raised by Noor. Would you like to say something, Noor?
Yes.
Hi. Uh-oh,
Excuse my voice. Sorry. Hello, everyone. Hello, Professor Walker.
Hi.
How are
Zachary.
you?
Good, good.
Glad to be with all of you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm Noor Mamich. I'm studying in the special education concentration.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask you, I think that you have another session in a couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Yeah, I was surprised when I saw that you have today this. I thought, no, it's not now, and the topic was different.
Nope, same session.
No, but that one was, I think, special education, or you're not in this field?
No, I'm in special education. We've got a couple of other sessions coming up, but today's was focused on, writing and presenting. I think, Myra, I think you put them up to start. Next week's is external examiners.
Correct. Yes.
The week after that. And then in April, we've got 2 as well. One of them will be on 10 questions that I ask of all educators to think about. So that's much more of a, these next 2 are quite pragmatic and practical. That one's much more of a kind of, how do we think about what we do?
Yeah.
So. I see we've got a couple of other hands up. No, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for insisting on us talking, because I wanted to share, to speak out, but I was feeling shy.
No, that's good. I'm glad you did. It's always lovely to have everyone's voice. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think Sherry Jean first, and then Aishan last, and then we will adjourn. Yep, Sherry Jean.
Yes, I'd like to thank Dr. Myra and of course Dr. Zachary for this very interesting, really interesting. It's amazing, and thank you so much. Really amazing. And when Dr. Zachary said that it's nice or it's good to laugh at yourselves sometimes, but I think sometimes it's also good to be funny sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're doing the presentation, yeah, I am really happy to attend this workshop, this conference, this seminar, whatever you call it, but it's really great. I salute you 2 hands from the left to the right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aishan, please go ahead.
Hi there again. Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on one thing. I'm the one, Dr. Zachary, who shared on LinkedIn the post. So, and we are, as a graduate students, I guess we have attended millions of workshops. And the thing is that the more you attend, the more you understand there are so many, there are so many things that you don't know, or you might be using for your research effective writing. Oh my God. I don't know. It's like limitless. And today you just shared how to do your literature review. I just screenshotted every single table you shared. I think the biggest fault I have this with the screenshots, because every time you attend the workshops, you try to take the best part of the workshop. And thank you for that, for that contribution. I guess we must use all the things. And in combination, I guess, with other workshop that we have in our luggage, we might be so, yeah, so powerful in writing our papers successfully, inshallah. So again, thank you, Dr. Myra, Dr. Zachary, and everyone in the college for organizing just right on time. You know, I don't know, it's like you guys, you're reading our minds, because we were really struggling writing all our dissertation proposal. So, and booms, you are there. Okay.
Always with you
Great.
guys in mind. Yep, definitely. So thank you so much, everyone. Yep, Dr.
I got one last thing to say based on that. So thank you so much. I think it's Aijan, right? Am I saying that correctly?
Aijan,
Absolutely, yeah. Great.
Thank you. So I just want to say this real quick. That feeling of not knowing how to do things, I don't know that that ever goes away if you're an academic. You know what I mean? Because every project is so new and everything is so new. But what I would say is, and this is something I say a lot, good habits are just as hard to break as bad ones. So if you create good habits around the process will guide you to productivity, even when you don't feel like you know what you're doing. You see what I mean? So if you can really establish good habits around processes that work for you, that is absolutely critical. And so that's why some of these frameworks just give you a starting point. And if you know that you're always going to at least start with that and then build, all of a sudden you've written papers and you're like, I don't really know how I got from there to here, but I have a much better understanding. So you're always going to feel a little overwhelmed. That's completely normal. And keep that in mind too. So.
I guess this is the hardest part to create, to establish all those good habits, you know?
Yeah, it is.
You always try to find excuses. You go and, you know, attend all the workshops. You want to find the answers, you know, to push yourself to create this foundation of, yeah. But yeah, inshallah, like, you know how Koreans say, quieting, like, yeah, go ahead. You can do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is not the last time that we will be seeing Professor Zachary Walker. We will be seeing him again next week. So
hopefully in person, hopefully.
And hopefully in person as well. Just for everyone's information, it's actually 4 a.m. in Professor Zachary Walker's time. So he is still very much, you know, alive and
no way. 4 a.m. in the morning. Oh my.
Yep,
I'm in the US right now, so it's quite early here.
So we are deeply grateful, Zachary, and thank you so much. And we do look forward to hosting you again next week. Yes.
Thank you so much. I'll see you soon. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye. Have a great weekend, everyone.